It doesn't matter what softwares you know today, because with time, every technical skill gets outdated. What truly stays with you are the core principles, your mindset, and the way you think about your subject. Welcome to the Foundations for UX Design, a 15 episode series that will take you through all the important lessons and realizations I've had so far as a self taught UX designer. My name is Ansh Mehra and I am a product designer and storyteller at Zuddle.com, which is a virtual events hosting platform. In this session, we will be learning some of the most common mistakes students make when they begin their career as a UX designer. I hope you've seen all videos from the series preceding this episode. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this session. So without wasting any further time, let's get started. Alright, welcome to lecture 6. Today we're going to discuss UI typographies. Introduction to UI typography, because before we go to Figma and declare our text styles, it's really important that we understand the theory of it. Most videos and tutorials that I see usually talk about declaring different headings and body text and labels, but they often forget some practical aspects of building a system that scales well on your platform. So most of these videos end at declaring the text styles, and that they never really show you what happens when you come to the development side of the things, what happens when you're actually using that system. So I wanted to fill in that gap. But before we go ahead, I am going to assume that you have seen my first 5 episodes uploaded on this channel, simply because I have mentioned so many things in the previous 4 episodes that are really crucial. Like, if your fundamentals are not strong, then you will find a few things confusing here. And even if you haven't started, it's absolutely okay. You can finish this video and go back, but you have to make sure that you follow this entire playlist with discipline. I hope that you've started watching the Office Hours playlist now, because I've been recommending everyone to watch the Getting Started and the New Features playlist. But now you have to start documenting your learnings from the Office Hours playlist on your Notion doc. You've been regularly reading the Medium articles that I'm putting. All of these Medium articles are very, very thorough, very practical, very easy to understand, and they are running parallel with this entire series. So there are so many things that I can't really cover in these live sessions simply because of the duration. So these Medium articles just keep you updated with whatever new that I discover on Figma and in the field of UX. And if you haven't started any of these things, finish your syllabus after this video. And in the end, the most important thing, you're taking care of your mind and your body, because none of this matters if your mind and body are not with you. So you have to make sure that you're taking care of all these things. Now, before building the system, the most important decision is choosing the right font. How do I decide what font works for me? Now, there are 2 ways that you can include a font in your landing page, in your website, in your platform. One is that you upload that file, which probably is an OTF file or a TTF file or whatever it may be. The second is that you fetch it. Even if you fetch it, do you fetch it from your own servers or do you outsource that as well? So the most recommended practice is to fetch it from a cloud source. So you either fetch it from a CDN or a cloud. I think CDN stands for Content Delivery Networks. Not sure, I have to Google this. But most people recommend to use Google Fonts. Why do they use that? Because when you use a Google font, you can add an SRC link. And this link allows you to fetch that font. So it just saves a lot of time as compared to, downloading the font that you've added. So if you make a website or a platform that has a lot of custom fonts, you will end up in trouble. So I would recommend you to always stick to Google Fonts. Even in Google Fonts, you have to figure out a font that has more weights. So you need a variety of weights simply to make life easier for you, because when you have weights from, say, light, then you have medium, then you have bold, then you can use these styles to establish hierarchy without using color or without using any other fancy item. So it just makes life much easier for you. And these are called super family fonts. So when you use these things, you realize that, I have 7 different weights, so I can do a couple of creative things here. Again, Google Fonts, absolutely open source and easy to load. And for this example, for this specific system, we will pick Inter, which is a font that I really, really like. But to be honest, we are simply scratching the surface, and you will have to read a lot more. And I will keep mentioning all the different articles and resources that I follow. So you'd have to complete your homework after watching this video. Now, there's a very interesting typeface test, and the credit goes to Jessica Hish. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right. So Jessica, sorry for that. But she said that whenever you are making a good system, or whenever you're choosing a font, check how their uppercase I, their lowercase l, and the number 1 looks like. So I have 3 Google fonts here, and you'd realize that in Inter, the uppercase I and the lowercase l pretty much look the same, which is not really a good sign. Even in Roboto, the difference is very slight, it's very subtle, but in the font Monda, it is absolutely crystal clear. But, it's a trade-off. Some people say that, it's kind of okay that the L and the uppercase is sort of okay. But it's just an interesting test that I knew, so I thought I'll just mention it to you guys. Let's expand our vocabulary, because when you make systems, you have to allocate specific text styles to specific components of your UI. So one text style will be dedicated to headline, one would be dedicated to subtext and paragraph, but there are few components that people often miss out. One of those is labels. So when you have an input field, you often have this label on the top, which probably has more kerning than usual. Kerning is the space between these letters, right? And in some cases, the same text style that you use for this label is also used for your eyebrows. So for example, this is my card. It's just a random card that basically talks about a course, right? We'll just assume. So this label text right here, which is the same text style, is actually an eyebrow. Some people call it kicker, some people call it overlines, but basically the type style that you use for your labels and your kickers and overlines is essentially the same. So important thing, very few people actually declare styles for this. They just manually increase the kerning, but that is not possible in your Figma styles. Another very interesting thing that a lot of people miss out is the concept of hyphens and n dash and m dashes. And even though this is not directly related to declaring your text styles, I just feel that it's a very important concept just to understand and just to explore the beauty of type, right? So hyphens are the smallest dash, and they used to stitch separate words into a single word. So when you see the word long-term effects, this dash or high tech or close up, all of these appear at the end. I mean, it's mostly an understanding of how do we use different symbols on your keyboard, because I'm pretty sure that you would be using the basic keys on your keyboard, but you wouldn't be using the special characters, which are only visible when you hold the Option key or the Alt key. And they really, really help you when you're solving a few problems. So this point is separate. I mixed this point and this point. So another use case of hyphens is that when you're completing a sentence and when the text is really long, the word splits. So in this case, if my div is this much, when you go after par, which is paragraph, you probably have the small little lines. So this is also a hyphen. And I would recommend you guys to read a wonderful, wonderful article by Pablo Stanley. It's called The Type Snob, and it is on their Medium publication. They have a Medium publication which is called The Design Team, and it's super fun, extremely valuable. You will absolutely love it. Then we have the n dash, which is used in dates or numbers to show range. So when you say pages 24 to 50, this is not a hyphen. This is actually an n dash. And it's also used for demonstrating conflict or connection between two different zones. So when you say Delhi-New York flight, this is actually an n dash, right? And how do you access this? You access it by pressing the Option and hyphen key on Mac. So this is normal key for hyphen. It's available on your keyboard, but you have to press Option to get that. And I'm not sure how many people know about this, but if you hold Control, Command and Space, you can actually access the emoji keyboard, which is very, very useful in just like even Notion documenting or even when you're texting, because you might not have your phone, and if you want to use an emoji, you can quickly access good looking emojis from the shortcut. So there are 3 different dashes, and there is hyphen, there is n dash and m dash, but you would be wondering, why is it called n dash or m dash? It's basically because m refers to the width of the character m, and n dash would refer to the character n. So this is smaller, right? And this goes back to when we had like printing presses. So they would refer, they obviously they needed a relative unit, right? So they chose the word M because they said that, oh, this is a really wide word, so you can just use this as reference. So the M dash would be equivalent to the width of the block that would use to print M. So the final dash is the biggest dash, which is the M dash, as we just discussed. And they are mostly used for adding a break in a sentence to bring extra attention, right? For example, if you're saying it's a great resource, no, it is the only resource you need. So if you're learning UX, my YouTube channel is probably that resource. So the M dash is probably used in documentation, in writing, in most copywriting. It's a very, very popular tool, and you can access it by Option, Shift, and hyphen key on your Mac. There's another wonderful, really, really detailed article, and it's on practicaltypography.com. It's called Butterick's Practical Typography. It is a beautiful article, perfect for in-depth learning if you're interested. Now, let's come to the practical aspect of this entire session. Let me just have some water before we get into this because it's going to get really heavy. Cool. So let's keep things very simple. We will probably just consider that our entire platform, and I'm not talking about a landing page, I'm not talking about a website, I'm talking about an app, a platform. Your entire platform will either have UI text, labels, or paragraphs. In most cases, 80 to 90% of your things are going to lie in these three buckets. Your marketing system can be absolutely perfect, right? So there has to be a system for your websites as well, but we will cater that separately. Right now, we're talking about the app that you will make. Now, there's a significant difference between your UI text and paragraphs. Most people mix these two. They don't declare separate types for it. And the biggest difference is the line height. Now, I know that a lot of you guys have seen this interface on the right side. I've inverted it. But this is available on Figma. When you write something on the right side, it is there in the design column. Most of you guys have seen these things, but you've never really explored them, right? Because most people say that, we just need to change the font size and line spacing and kerning and, we are done with it. But this panel has immense power. Like, I can't even overestimate the kind of power and potential this panel has. So typography is pretty awesome. And once you understand how it works, you will never be confused or intimidated by font libraries. So what I've done is we will understand 5 core things about this entire panel, and I've bulleted them out. So we have these 5 different things that we will understand today. And the first one is the line height. So this is my text here, right? This is my fancy little text. I've used Inter for this. The line height which I've used here is 120%. And the subtext has 150%. So I've used 2 examples so that I can show you how things vary. So the heading has a line height of 120%. And then I've realized that, as the font size decreases, I have to increase the line height. So this is a basic thumb of rule. But you say that, fine, 50 pixels font, this is the line height. 32 pixel font, this is the line height. And you're saying that, I have to use percentages on Figma. I write 150%, 120%. But your developer might prefer pixels. Simply because when you deal in percentages, you actually end up with complicated decimals. Because percentages are relative. And when you declare pixels, then it's absolutely concrete. So the right strategy is to declare your line height in pixels. Once you figure out that, 120% for the headlines, I've decided that I've used 120% for my headlines. Then I say that, I have H1, H2, H3. This is 64. This is 60. This is 58. Then I just simply calculate the values in pixels, right? Why should I give them? Don't give them a thumb rule that, I have, 64, 60 and 58 pixel headings. And the line height for all of these are 150%. Don't do this. Give them the exact pixels and have a system for calculating the line height as well. So there are many approaches to do this as well. And you can, Google this. Some people find the golden ratio a nice approach. Some people have like a different There are geometrical scales that you can use to figure out what line height you have to do. But the basic thumb rule is that as the font decreases, you need to increase the line height. So a very, very good resource is the goodlineheight.com, and it is perfect for in-depth learning. Again, like, it will give you a head start. It will make you understand that what line height works well for different font sizes. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. So let's start implementing these things. Let's just say I have some UI text. Okay, this is my card. This entire thing is a profile card, right? And it says Ansh Mehra. You have your designation and you have your company. This is not a heading. This is not a paragraph. This is basically a one-line text. In your UI text, you need your line height to be as tall as your text. That is 100%. So if it says Ansh, you basically need to make sure that my line height is only till here. Simply because when I have my line height till here, I can basically say that, oh, I can tell my developer that between my name and designation, there's probably a pixel padding of like 4 pixels. I'm sorry, I said pixel padding. But if you had more line height inbuilt in your UI text, then you would often have some internal padding. Say this is my Ansh. There is some external padding here. Then you say add 4 pixels. Then you have some external padding here and here as well in your designation, which you don't want. So in your UI text, you have to make sure that your line height is 100%. But in your paragraph, you can't have it at 100% because it will look very tight for long text and long paragraphs. So this here is how it might look when you say the line height is 100%. Can you see how tight it is? Because there's absolutely no space. This comma and this H, they're absolutely coinciding, which looks really, really bad. And in the second case, you have some line height. This is my second case. And there I have a line height of 150%. So there's more breathing space. I can understand what is happening. Now we'll come to letter spacing. And in this specific heading, I've made the letter spacing as -3%. And this is how the font actually looks like if I had never changed the letter spacing. So it looks slightly off. For some reason, this looks really cool, whereas this has a bit too much space. But can you notice how things are slightly different here? So whenever you change these settings on your right side panel, this is what you see in your inspect panel. You have an inspect panel on Figma and you would see 150% only in your CSS. But when you add -3% in your Figma properties panel, you would realize that your inspect doesn't say -3%. It actually says something like -0.03 M. This is not percentage. This is not pixel. Then why did Figma convert this into M's? Now the question is, what exactly are M's? And a lot of you would have heard about rems as well. See, pixels are absolute, rems are relative. Now, here is where we come to the most exciting part of this session. We introduce relative units. And if you're making responsive platforms, if you're making responsive websites, you need to understand how relative units work. You can't really work just in pixels. This is very, very important, especially for your websites and landing pages. If not for your platform, understanding relative units is extremely important when you're making client-based websites, like selling conversion websites, because you have too many different desktops that you have to accommodate when you're making a website. So relative units are not absolute like pixels. If I say that something is 12 pixels, this will stay 12 pixels, whether it's a small computer, a big computer, or a really big computer. But what if I say that I want 12 pixels for the small computer, maybe 16 pixels for a medium-sized computer, and 18 pixels for a really big computer? Because I don't want the guy to, squint his eyes when he's reading my font if he has a really big computer. So I need font sizes that change according to the size of my computer. Now, when we say the size of my computer, we are basically talking about the viewport. It is the viewport width or the viewport height. Now, there are many, many popular relative units and we don't have to discuss all of them, but there is percentages, which might say that 70% of this thing. There is viewport width, which means that as your desktop width increases, the font size also increases. Then there's viewport height as well, that if the height of my computer increases, only then the font size will increase. Then there is M, then there is rem. Now this M basically comes from that M dash explanation that we had. You basically had this M letter, it is the width of this M. But the question is, where did this M come from? What is the size of this M, right? Because when we had printing presses, we can say that this M is maybe, 5 centimeters or so forth. But even if we say that 1 M, which is relative to some M, how big is that M? So your browser has a base font size. Every browser has it. If you're using Google Chrome, it might be set to 16 pixels. That is a base font size that every Chrome browser comes with. So if you go into your settings panel in your Chrome's appearance settings, or even if you search the word font in your search panel, when you go to customize fonts or font size, this is the font size settings that you would have to open. You would realize that this base font size is actually 16 pixels. It's probably going to be set till here, and you can change this. So if you're a guy who wants really small fonts, you can reduce this from 16 to 12. Or if you're a really old person who needs to have big fonts on every website, so you will set it at probably this point. So no matter what website you're opening, Google Chrome will automatically translate that in big fonts. So when I say that my Google Chrome has a 16 pixel base font, it basically means that 1 M is equal to 16 pixels. It is relative to my base font size. But if a really old person has increased that base font size from 16 to 24, then 1 M becomes 24 pixels for that old user. And in the start, only M came. Right? They were not absolute and they were influenced by other factors. But recently we've been using REMs. But let's understand what was the problem with M's, what are REMs, and why do we need the two of them, and which one should we pick? See, just by using M's, you will have a couple of unexpected font sizes, and I'll tell you why. Even though it sounds very logical, I'll tell you why you can expect incorrect fonts when you're using M. And this example is slightly complex. It involves nesting, and nesting is the only reason why you should not use M's. But bear with me, you might have to watch this video twice for this section, but I'm not scaring you. It's actually very simple. Okay, don't worry. We'll go through this entire thing slowly. So let us assume that my browser has a base font size of 16 pixels. I have a website that has a big container. So this is my big container right here. And this is how it looks. You have a nice picture, you have your heading, you have some subtext. Now I am going to split this entire container into sections. So this big thing right here, this big box, this is my parent container. This box here, which has my heading and my subtext and a bunch of things, this is a child element of this parent container. This is not declared in code. Like in code, you would have one div, then inside that big div, you have small divs. So this is my logical way of understanding, and even like most developers understand this way, that this is a child element of this big parent container. Now, fine, on the outer level, we have a big parent with a child, but this child element is also a parent container for this heading and this subtext. So if I only consider this small little box, you would realize that this paragraph is a child paragraph inside this parent. Easy to understand. Now I have to declare font sizes. I am making this on Figma. I am coding this. I have to declare the font sizes in M's. I am not going to use pixels. I'm making a responsive website. Now imagine that my base font size is set to 16 pixels. I'm using Google Chrome. So instead of 24 pixels, this is actually 24 pixels. In my design, when I was designing, I made this 24 pixels and I made this as 12 pixels. But now we've decided we will never use pixels. So I will simply convert 24 pixels into 1.5 M. the calculation is pretty simple because 1.5 of my 16 pixels will give me 24 pixels. So this is my M, this is my base font size, and this is the end result that I want. So if an uncle has changed this to probably 18, this thing would increase, and that is what I want. And instead of 12 pixels, I would simply make it 0.75 M. That is the calculation. 0.75 of 16 pixel would give me 12 pixels. So everything is sorted. So I would make my entire website and realize that, oh, wonderful. And I would expect that this 12 pixels, which is now coded as 0.75 pixels, when I open the website, I will see 12 pixels. So this is my expectation. But in reality, I will get 18 pixels. How did that happen? I mean, we are multiplying it by base font size, right? No, you're not. And I'll tell you what happens. When I have a child paragraph, and when I say that this is 0.75 M, this M does not refer to my browser. It actually refers to the parent container. So I thought that 0.75 M would refer to 16 pixels of my Chrome, but it is actually referring to the font size of my parent container, and my parent container had a font size of 24 pixels. You can actually add it. So if you use Webflow, you know that you can add font sizes to specific divs as well. So it doesn't matter what your website has or what is your root, like what is your Chrome base font or whatever, you can actually allocate specific font sizes to this big div, big box in your website. So the problem is that M is relative to the parent and not your Chrome. So REMS, which is the new format, this is the new format. REMS are directly relative to your root element of the website. Too many complicated words, but just 1 minute. The R in REMS stands for root. And why root? Because it simply references the HTML tag or your base font size. So there are different ways to treat this. You can either refer to your base font size or you can actually refer to your HTML tag as well. But when we use REMS, we know that if your Chrome is set on 16 pixels, in most cases, most cases, your REM is going to refer this as root. So technically, REMs are the most accessible way to declare your fonts. Not M's, not pixels, but REMs. I know this session has slightly become complicated. You might have to read a little, but once you read this, you will truly understand this, and you will thank me when you're declaring your type system, because you'll finally realize that yes, he has actually mentioned a very important point. So let's not overdo it, right? Please read more on typography and CSS. Don't restrict yourself to just your Figma files or just the basic type styles that you see on different websites. Don't restrict yourself to that. Go deep, understand how CSS works, and make sure that you're revising everything that you're learning. Because if you're not revising, you will eventually lose out. It's super important that you document all of this and start reading Medium articles on design. If not mine, just start reading others' articles and finish your pending videos after this video. If you're coming here for the first time, you have to see everything that I've taught till now to understand what was happening. Next session is going to be on the declarations. Next session we'll go on Figma and start declaring a type system. But I just wanted you guys to understand why would I use REMs instead of pixels. Most people directly jump to REMs. They never really teach the concept of REMs, or how did we even reach to the point of using REMs, which I feel that was very important. Now, just a proper important announcement. We have some premium sessions available on Graphy, and it is perfect for people who wish to improve their processes and complementary skills, outside your basic skills. So you have a session on interface design, you have a session on Notion, a session on learning fast and earning more. Then there's a session on how to get a good design job. And then there's a very interesting session on how I use Figma for my social media campaign. So how do I build systems in Figma that allow me to make really good carousels and really good posters, and how do I capture myself, what is my equipment, what kind of lights do I use, and all those different things. And these sessions have unlimited replays, so you buy them once and you have them forever. And you can go to anshmehra.graphy.com. I'll put the link in the description so that you can get them. But yes, If you liked this video, make sure you like, make sure you comment your review, and make sure you subscribe, because if you don't subscribe, how will you know about the next episode? And it really, really helps when you put a review on Instagram. If you tag me on anshmera.work, it simply helps me reach more people. And apart from that, yes, I think I'm pretty happy that we've reached to this point. I'm happy that you have made it to episode 6. There are more episodes to go, but I am absolutely confident that the end of these 15 episodes, your basics will become strong enough. But yes, see you guys super soon. The Hindi episode will also be out, so if you're interested in learning in Hindi, that is also available. And I will see you next time. Take care, guys. Bye.
Hello.
Sir, is this Mr. Verma for apartment rentals?
हैं?
सर हिंदी आता है?
हाँ, हिंदी आता है, बोलो।
सर मुझे बेलंदूर में एक 2 BHK अपार्टमेंट ढूंढना था, फुली फर्निश्ड, टेक एरिया के पास। तो अभी क्या रेंट्स चल रहे हैं?
किस पर्पस के लिए?
एक्चुअली मेरी इंटर्नशिप है यहाँ, 6 महीने की है, तो इसलिए घर लेना था रेंट पे।
मैरिड हो?
नहीं सर, मैं कॉलेज स्टूडेंट हूँ।
ड्रिंक्स लेते हो?
ड्रिंक्स?
ड्रिंक्स, दारू ड्रिंक्स करते हो?
नहीं, ड्रिंक तो नहीं करता।
घर कब से चाहिए?
मतलब अभी से ही चाहिए, मैं तो बैंगलोर आ गया हूँ, नेक्स्ट वीक से इंटर्नशिप शुरू है मेरी।
हाँ, इतनी जल्दी नहीं मिलेगा, मिनिमम 3 months पहले बताना होता बेटा।
बट कोई तो घर खाली होगा ना?
खाली है, बट बैचलर को नहीं देता मैं।
क्यों? मैं तो ना ड्रिंक करता हूँ ना स्मोक करता हूँ।
नहीं, और बेटे 6 महीने के लिए कोई घर नहीं मिलता। 12 महीने का तो रजिस्ट्री होगी, 11 का लोगे तो नोटराइज्ड एग्रीमेंट बनेगा, 3 महीने सिक्योरिटी, 1 महीने का एडवांस रेंट, स्टैंप ड्यूटी।
ये सब तो मुझे नहीं पता क्या होता है।
हाँ तो गूगल कर लो, टेक के हो आप।
हाँ बट अच्छा, तो घर आपका है या किसी और का है?
बेटे घर मेरा थोड़ी होगा, मैं ब्रोकर हूँ।
अच्छा, तो पेमेंट आपके नाम होगी या?
पेमेंट आपको दूसरे ब्रोकर को करनी होगी।
दूसरा ब्रोकर?
जिससे डील साइन करवाओगे वो भी तो आएगा।
तो आप कौन हो?
मैं भी ब्रोकर हूँ।
तो एक घर के लिए एक ही ब्रोकर तो होगा।
तो एक काम करो, आप उस पे डायरेक्टली जाओ, उससे ही बात कर लो, जाओ। बजट कितना आपका?
मैक्सिमम 10-15 हजार।
बेटे इतने में तो आपको 1 BHK नहीं मिलना, मिनिमम 20,000 का, वो भी सेमी फर्निश्ड मिलेगा।
इतना तो बजट नहीं है मेरा।
चलो एक बार मिलो मुझसे, कंसल्टिंग लगती है मेरी, कंसल्टिंग फीस 800 रुपये।
किस बात की?
बेटे आपको बेंगलोर का बेस्ट ब्रोकर मिल गया है, ज्ञान की फीस नहीं दोगे आप?
अरे भैया मुझसे गलती हो गई आपको फोन मिलाकर।
रुको, 10,000 का भी है, थोड़ी हाइट पर है। कंसल्टिंग फीस मत दो, डायरेक्टली घर देखने आ जाओ। अभी चाबी पड़ी है मेरे पास, आ जाओ आप।
नहीं मुझे नहीं चाहिए, आप रहने दो।
सुनो तो, आप 1 सेकंड बात सुनो, आप आ जाओ। चाबी पड़ी, मैं दिखा देता हूँ ना। अरे सुनो तो सही मेरी आप।